on the training. We made a joint request for this funding, and I think it's just the start of efforts that you're going to see on behalf of these organizations working together on behalf of local governments. This is a big deal. What the governor has done, we appreciate it so much. It looks like you all have had your hands full with the administration, and we can't wait to hear. Jim and I have some questions from our members. The members are muted. Instead of having, it looks like it's going to tick up to about 300 people or so. Jim and I'll kind of facilitate those questions if we get them in the question and answer. We've got some ahead of time, and we'll just kind of guide those questions. I assume, Billy, you're going to be talking a whole heck of a lot. But let me introduce my counterpart at the Kentucky Association of Counties, Jim.
JD, thank you. And Commissioner, thank you so much for doing this. I know that there have been a number of these types of things done already with our many county officials, especially the county judges and the magistrates, I know, who are kind of, at the head of fiscal matters in a county in terms of funding and grants. I know you all done some work with our ads, which have been great. And so we, as you all know, and members on the call will know that, of course, the Kentucky Association of Counties represents a lot more county officials than just county judges and magistrates. We have a number of sheriffs that are on the call today, some county clerks, coroners, PVAs are also part of KACO. There's a coroners, circuit clerks, county attorneys. So there are people that may have not yet been involved in something where you all have done some presentations that might get a chance to hear some things for the first time today. I know a number of county treasurers are joining the webinar today in many cases, as I know the team there at DLG knows, those are the folks who will be really facilitating a lot of the reporting and the documentation. So having them on the call today is helpful. So on behalf of counties, and JD's all said the right things already about our working together on this, and I appreciate that relationship that we have. I very much appreciate the governor reaching out to KACO and KLC early and asking us if we could work together on developing some ideas on the CARES Act. And when the governor calls and asks you to work on something, you say yes. And we've been very much appreciative of that invitation to work with him and you all in this. So I look forward to the dialogue today. Again, we've got 300 plus, it looks like, maybe already on. So a great crowd to hear some feedback, maybe for some, the very first time. And so Commissioner King, thank you for your relationship with counties, especially with our president, Judge Gary Moore. And I know you all have talked a lot through this process on our behalf. And so we appreciate what you and your team are doing. I'm just going to pitch it to you, I think, first, and then JD and I'll kind of come in when we need to if we've got questions on our members' behalf. So Commissioner King, thank you.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate having this call today. This is unprecedented times that we deal with. We've never seen anything like this. At least I have never seen anything like this. And it calls for cooperation from all of us. I mean, there's no Democrat or Republic or black or white or anything to what this dilemma is. And fortunately, our governor has set aside $300 million to help aid our cities and counties who've been hurt very bad. As we move forward, we're going to have to take the time to reach out even more to the league and to KACO and to our county ed districts to help expedite this money. We've had several applications come through already and have been approved. It's running really smoothly. We wanted to make this process very user friendly, and we believe it has been. I've got a great team of people that's working on this. The governor gave us a heads up, like he did you all, that this was coming. This is very important work that we're doing, and plus keeping our shop running to its full capacity. We have a lot of people working remotely, and I want to tell you, I'm very proud of my staff because they've gone beyond the call of duty. They've stepped up to the plate to go all out for the Commonwealth. Not only are we dealing with this pandemic and the Corona-19, but we're also, you have to still do our regular jobs. So it's been quite an achievement. I've been very proud of the hardworking people, my staff, and I can't say enough about them. But I'll be very proud to introduce one of my best people. Well, they're all good people, but one that's been running the show and doing an excellent job is Billy Johnson. So, Billy, it's your turn to take on the star.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Commissioner. And Mr. Henderson and Mr. Cheney, thanks for getting us together on this call today. I think this is probably our 16th virtual Zoom talking about the COVID funds. And so I'm just going to get right to the information at hand. And if there are any questions that pop up in the chat, you can let me know. I do have some of my staff on today as well that will probably come on and intervene. I want to make sure that their mics are unmuted if need be. And Jennifer Peters and Travis Weber from the federal grant staff is here with me today, and Matt Stevens, our general counsel, is with us as well. And then I think Will Rhodes from our county branch is on the call as well. So if we have questions about county budgets and how they will go forward with the meeting of their budgets after July 1, he can probably interject on that information as well. So as you know, I won't go back through and talk about how much money we've got. We've already, we know how much money the governor has allocated for the counties and local governments. We do know that this is not, unfortunately, it is not a revenue replacement funding, but there is a lot of positive with the guidelines that are offered on our website and the FAQs that are offered on our site. And JD, if you don't mind, if somebody will type our web address in the chat so everybody can look at that, that would be helpful at kydlgweb.ky.gov. That actually has the information, the application, the guidance, the FAQs that have just actually recently been updated. There's a few more FAQs that are on that as well. But anyway, going to the first page of the FAQ, and I think this is actually probably the biggest questions that we are getting, and this may cover quite a few of the questions that JD had sent to Mary Palmer for us to look at too. Talking about payroll regarding your first responders, you know, as the U.S. Treasury put in the guidance, they have put the wording in that it is substantially dedicated for police, firefighter, and EMS. And these are first responders that have been presumed mitigating COVID-19 since March the 1st. So being that this is a reimbursement allocation and the way these funds will go, this starts back at March 1st. So if you submit an application today, we can only pay you and reimburse you for their salaries, which is salaries, benefits, and that's also their overtime as well. And we want you to produce that in a nice spreadsheet form. That's all we need. We don't need payroll checks. We don't have time to go through all that. And I'll probably talk to you a little bit more about how to submit some of the documentation that will be of help to us and make this process go as quickly, because we want to be sure to be able to get these funds back out to you as well. Okay, so so that was the first question. Do eligible payroll expenses have to be for public employees only, or could they also be for non-profits responding to coronavirus? Now, there are different areas of expenses that we can cover regarding someone's payroll. On the nonprofits, no, the 100% payroll that is eligible, of course, is our first responders, or some of your EMS directors. I think that some counties have said they pay 50-50, so we can reimburse that. If you have employees in your county that or city that have been repurposed with their duties, we can reimburse that if it's purposed duties that are COVID related. sometimes that might be a case by case. You may want to call us and ask us. You can also send a question to an inbox that we have set up, dlg.crf@ky.gov. We have eyes sitting on that email address at all times, and we'll be glad to return any questions, and usually on a quick basis. Okay, let me go on. Is only one application allowed for the entire amount of allocated funds, or can cities submit multiple requests for increments of funding? Okay, let me give you just a quick rundown of how the process will go, and then to answer that question, no, you do not have to request all your funds right now in the first application. Actually, if you do not spend all your funds, you may want to, I'd say, consider yourself blessed, because some areas have told me we really didn't have a lot of expenses, and that's great if you didn't. But what we will do, once we receive your application and you have itemized in the areas where your expenditures fall, and we look through that and make sure that everything checks out, we will send you a preliminary approval letter that you will have to look at, sign the second page, and you will need to send that back once your council or your fiscal court passes a resolution. And there's a sample resolution on our website. It's under the federal grants tab too. Once you go to our website, you can reach, you can click on federal grants, and at the top it says COVID-19, and all that information is there. So there is a copy of a sample resolution. There's also a duplication of benefits form that you will have to fill out. Now, I can't stress to you enough, there's a lot of money coming in. Some groups have already received quite a bit of funding. HHS sent a lot out to ambulance services. We do know that the Justice Cabinet is receiving quite a few funds, so you may want to check, because this does not cover any jail staff, unfortunately. These funds will not cover any jail staff, but we also can cover whether you sanitized or you had to do a lot of reconfiguring with making sure there's social distancing or separation of inmates, or even with the staff there at the jail. So anything PPE that you've purchased, all that is okay, but we just cannot pay the payroll of your jail staff. And I hate that, and that would be a nice cost, but I think you may be able to get some relief from the Justice Cabinet on that. Also, Board of Elections, I think that's been with your clerk's offices talking about funding there. Right now, we are recommending anybody to hold off on giving funds to your clerk's offices, whether it's just PPE and maybe sanitizing or disinfecting the areas there. Hold off when it comes to election-related information, because the Board of Elections has sent out some funds, and you want to make sure, you know, if you're going to send an application in, say July 1, the election will be over, you should have some indication. We just want to make sure that there's no duplication of funds. We want to keep you off the front page of the paper, and make sure that all these funds are spent the correct way. So I can't caution that enough, especially on our emergency services, because I do know about those funds so far. We've been made aware of that. So once you send that back in, that packet of forms, we will then enter you into a memorandum of agreement, and that will be between the state and the city, or the state and the county. We will send that to you, and we will put you under contract for your full maximum capacity amount. So on the front side of it, it sounds like there's a lot of red tape to go through, but it's not near as bad as you think. It's just the point of getting the paperwork back to us quickly. Then another month or two down the road, when you have more expenditures roll in, you can send that information to us, and we will process that. We won't have to do another resolution. We won't have to go into another memorandum of agreement. So all those steps will be taken out, and then you can just draw on those funds that we have you under contract for. And if you spend all your money by the end of the year, then we'll just go up to that amount, and that's it. This runs from March the 1st till December 30th. So up to 11:59 on December 30th, you have time to purchase, whether it be sanitizer or anything you need. And we will probably run requests for disbursements to draw that money down probably at mid-February. It could be the end of January. So we'll try to get all those funds back out to you by then. But of course, the expenditure date to purchase anything is December 30th. Can cities submit approval for funds for expenses that haven't incurred yet? What we would like for you to do on this first report is when you send in this application, and this application is set up in Excel format. Some have sent that in, saved as a PDF, and we've had to send it back to you. We have to have that in an Excel format because there's an interactive section on that for us to use as well. So what we'd ask for you to do is send what you've already done and don't send the projections. If it's payroll sheet from March 1st to May 30th or June 15th, whatever that may be. If you have purchased any kind of PPE, as for documentation, we'll have to have an itemized invoice. We will have to have copies of canceled checks, front and back, sent in for that documentation as well. You have to assume, well, there's no assumption to it. You have to know that the auditors will be coming within the next year or so to look at your books to make sure everything was on the up and up. So we cross every T and dot every I and make sure that everything is accounted for. Now, to make it easy on us, we ask that you don't just take a chance on, well, we'll just dump a bunch of information here and we'll let them sort through it. Folks, we're going to get over 500 applications if everybody sends in an application. Now, we have a staff of about 13 or 14, and we're trying to get more in to help. But you got to realize if you've scanned in 180 pages of backup documentation, we're going to have to sift through that, and it's going to be time consuming. So for the first go around, I would ask that you send stuff that you know falls within the guidelines and is eligible. And if you have a question, please don't hesitate to call us or send an email to us so we can answer that and not have to return it back to you and ask for something else, okay? Let's see. And how often should we submit reimbursements? That's left up to you. We haven't set any kind of deadlines. We haven't made any decisions on that. Once we get you under contract, if you have, I would recommend not sending in a $150 invoice in 2 weeks that you probably paid, say a face shield or something for. I would wait at least 1 or 2 months to get built up a little bit more money, unless you just got $150 in your account, then we'll be glad to give it to you. Sources have stated that there will be reimbursement for all policemen and firemen, but the CARES Act states, hang on here, I'm going to have to move this screen. I've gone out of it. But the CARES Act states it's for items not budgeted. Obviously, the police and fire salaries were budgeted, so is there only reimbursement for additional salaries due to COVID? The source for all salaries was DLG. Okay. The way it's written in the U.S. Treasury, and if you go to page 1 on the front of the frequently asked questions, it talks about the guidance for payroll. Okay, if you go to page 10, the way the Commonwealth of Kentucky is interpreting the wording on this is 100%. Yes, you have budgeted for your regular duties as officers, firefighters, whatever the case may be. But since COVID came around and the U.S. Treasury said, well, now this is presumed that they have been working COVID related since March the 1st. So you go back, this is a reimbursement. And that's the way that the Commonwealth of Kentucky is interpreting that. And I know we've had some questions about this information, and I think that if you can probably reference some more information. I think in the Courier Journal back in May, I know Senator McConnell, there was a story in the Courier Journal where he was talking about the flexibility that Secretary Mnuchin had given for this money for your first responders. And he was very happy that LMPD and the folks in Louisville will be using that to pay the first responders. So that's the way we're interpreting it. You send those payrolls in, we will honor that.
Billy, while you're on that, Billy,
Billy,
I hate to
Okay.
intervene, but this way you don't have to come back. But we have a lot of people asking questions when it talks about the payroll, whether that includes the CERS, the retirement contributions, or other types of fringe benefits, health insurance. Is it just straight payroll expense, or does that also include other types of benefits?
It includes their salary and their benefits. The only thing that it does not include would be CLEF funding, any kind of incentives that such as that. Most of our, I think in the retirement packages, there's already hazard pay. We've had some questions about hazard pay, but we cannot do bonuses. But it's just it's straight what their health insurance, benefits, retirement, every bit of that is for, and their salary. They got you? Okay. All right.
We have a whole bunch of
let me see
questions
here.
here
I
in the
have
Q&A, Billy, so Jim and I may intervene. He's got-
Okay, let me
But you go through these and then we'll come back.
let me open this back up. Well, hang on a minute. I've managed to.
Hey, Billy, along that line, with county official benefits, that would not be applicable either, would it?
Will, you
Say that
got,
one more time, Will. You cut out.
The county officials training and that would not allow expense, would it?
You still are breaking up, Will.
The county officials training incentive, House Bill 810, that would not be an allowable expense, correct?
No.
Okay.
Billy, let me make sure I'm clear on a couple things on that as well. So we have obviously elected sheriffs that would be a part of emergency response. Are the elected officials' salaries, kind of with Will's question there, are they a part of that payroll that is allowable if it's a sheriff?
The sheriff is, if they are probably coordinating, and they're probably out working themselves as well. Now, the only ones that are not, but here's the other thing, on the FAQs of that page, on the front page of that, on the last line, there's one thing that says, unless the chief executive or equivalent of the relevant government determines that specific circumstances indicate otherwise. Now, if you have a sheriff that's just sitting in the office and they're not going to be out any kind of public facing at all, because we know the offices have been shut down, and this goes for their administrative staff, then no, you don't want to report that. But if there's been 2 or 3 different scenarios, Jim, of those given to us, and we have to base that on an honor system as well. Did that answer you?
Yeah, and we've talked with the auditor's office just kind of about a couple of questions. Obviously, as you said, and the commissioner, I mean, obviously on the backside of this, as counties and counties a little more so than cities, with regard to the standards for the state auditor's office, we've just asked a few questions that still seem a little gray. That might be a gray one. So I guess I would probably suggest to counties, at least, if you've got enough other expenses to not count your sheriff's salary, that's probably the safest request at this point. Would you agree?
I would think so. If they're not out working, if they think that there would be in question about it, I definitely would.
You know, there's a whole lot too. While we're on public safety, there's a whole lot of county and city officials who are asking about dispatch, 911 dispatch, whether they come into that definition of frontline public safety employees when they dispatch for COVID-related calls.
No, they're not eligible. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out, JD, where I may have, just to clarify, can we explain 100% of this? I think I did that.
That you're on the grant program for small business grant. There's a lot of cities I know, Jim, and I don't know if you're having that with counties that are asking about setting up a grant program as discussed under the FAQ for small business relief due to their closures related to COVID. How do you see that as permissible? One, and two, what kind of structure are you looking at for that in terms of how reimbursement works if a city or county wanted to establish that?
Okay, if you go on page 3 of the guidelines, the grants for the small businesses falls under 5A. And yes, that is an eligible expense if you want to give a grant to a small business. And actually, a small business, the definition of a small business in the federal grants world is 500 employees or less. But we will let you all determine that as an elected official. You will need to come up with an agreement between you and said business. Now, of course, anything that would have been of interruption, and we know that there was, you can determine what kind of amount you want to put on that grant. Actually, our contract from the state is with the fiscal court or the city and the mayor's office. So you all will need to decide the stipulations on that, and that's probably more between you and them because that will be your all's agreement. We're not going to get into the agreement between you and the business because that we're going just a little bit too far deep for us. So I would probably talk to your city or county attorneys and probably set up an agreement for them to go into. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably utility bills there. You know, I don't think that there would be something hard to minimize a small grant package for a business. I caution you though, SBA has done business loans, there's PPP loans, so I would make sure that there's not a duplication within a business getting another loan from the federal government.
Billy, you want me to help you through the rest of these? Just read them off, or you like reading them?
Yeah, that'd be great, because I was reading your questions that was in the email, but I think the majority of that, I think pretty much is already been covered.
I think
our
we're up to 33 questions in the
okay, let's go.
The Q&A. We got Billy Phelps is on the London City Council and asked whether they're subject, the funds once they're distributed, are they subject to city and county occupational tax since it's salary reimbursement? And if you want me to answer that question, I'll be happy to answer that question, which is the payments made to the government.
We haven't had that question.
Yeah, when the payment's made directly to the government, city or county occupational tax came out when they originally paid the salary, so it wouldn't be double taxed. This is not a payment of the salary directly to the employee. It's a reimbursement to the government for what they paid. So that wouldn't be the case. Jim, I don't know if you can see these Q&A, but Sabra from Woodford County.
I can see them, JD. I'm looking at a laptop, so it's a little smaller, and you appear to be sitting at your desktop.
Yep.
You may see some of those a little better than I can. But that question from the fiscal court that has interlocal agreements, the question about being able to seek portions of reimbursement for payments out, I guess, in an interlocal agreement to a sister government that they do services together. Is that how you read that question?
Yes.
So
The
the
county-
county,
yeah.
Billy, work together in a interlocal agreement of some kind for, and I mean, I'm broadening this a little bit because there's probably other scenarios like that where there are shared expenses between both the county and the city, or each government, each entity that's got funding eligible to apply for the portion that they would be participating in that interlocal agreement for salaries and things like that, like law enforcement, shared law enforcement.
Yes, they would need to, between the city and the county, however they do that, whatever the percentage is, they would need to allocate that from their funds and provide that information.
And if I can, JD, another series of things that I see, I'm trying to kind of group what I see coming through maybe together that are the same kinds of questions. As I mentioned earlier, Billy and Commissioner, a lot of sheriffs are on the call today. You just explained that the fiscal court is the applicant. Of course, in many counties, the county sheriff, the county clerk are fee-based offices. Their budgets are either supplemented by fiscal court, or in some cases, they pay excess fees back to the fiscal court. So in order for the sheriff who's not fee pooling to get reimbursed for his or her emergency responder expenses, that application still needs to be made through the fiscal court. And then I guess, Will, maybe for budgeting, how could they get those funds back into the sheriff's budget to really get it to the place where the expenses occurred?
Right. It would just be like any other time where the sheriff would present a claim to the fiscal court. As you know, no lump sum payments are allowed to the fee office. So I know it's kind of a lot of back and forth, but it would be kind of normal business per se of getting that money back to them, where the sheriff would present that claim to the fiscal court and then transfer that money over.
Excellent. JD, jump in with some others there if you want.
Yeah, we're all, most of the questions, you guys are probably not surprised, seem to revolve around what employees can we get reimbursed for. We have some cities, here's an example from the mayor of Mount Washington. We have a few city employees that have been redirected to help with food and other essential goods for deliveries to our elderly citizens that are non-public safety related employees. While they've been dedicated to doing that delivery and that service necessary as related to the COVID emergency, can their salaries be recovered because of their repurposing and dedication to compliance with the order?
Yes, we deem that eligible because they would not do that under other circumstances if everything was on a regular, normal day. So if you are repurposing employees' duties, yes, those can be eligible. Now, when we ask for your documentation on that, to help us out, we know that you're going to scan in invoices, checks, and we're going to have a whole lot of information. But right when we open up a document, if you can give us a breakdown of your expenses, say, sheriff's salaries, 100,000, the firefighters, 50,000, your supplies for PPE, 30,000. If you can do that in the beginning part of it, just so for it to be for us to be able to look down as to that will help us so much. I told somebody the other day, I said, if a 10-year-old could read this, that's the way we want it to be, simple and organized out. That will help us so much to get this stuff out to you all as quickly as possible. But yes, those kind of repurposing of duties is something that we can reimburse. It just needs to be explained. Also, if you've had employees that were home per doctor's orders to be quarantined, whether they tested positive or they were in contact with somebody and they had to go home and be quarantined for that, we need to know that information. We can cover that as well. Another part of some expenditures on payroll that we can cover. We realize that inmates have been locked down, and so if you have any kind of labor that inmates were providing for you all as a county, whether it be mowing, it could be some trash pickup. If you had to contract out and pay for that yourself to have it done, if you had to hire part-time employees because your inmate labor was not there, that information is what we need. We can reimburse that as well.
Going along that line.
Office bookkeeper salaries are not, go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're fine, Billy. You're the expert here. They're asking on about vehicle maintenance and gasoline for first responder vehicles.
I'm sorry, that's not eligible. We were talking about this morning. That was on one of your questions.
Water.
And let me, go ahead.
You're good, Billy. I don't want to interrupt you.
Some other things that we're talking about, and this is probably not going to be a fan favorite statement of mine, but we have discussed this. We are hearing from a lot of emergency management. I don't want to throw off on them, but folks, be careful on what you're requesting. We've had some high dollar equipment to be purchased that some of this we have deemed eligible, some of it not. And when I say that I mean we, because I don't make this decision my own. I always talk to at least 3 of my staff, and we make the decision on what we are going to say is eligible and not. But we've had questions about replacing radios in vehicles, purchasing vehicles. That kind of stuff is not anything that we can deem eligible under these fundings. There is equipment that we do know that will help. Some cot loaders that are being installed into ambulances. We've had a breakdown of a justification on what some of this stuff is for. Before you put big purchase items and send that stuff in, please call and talk to us about it, and let's make sure that we are getting stuff that is what's needed for this fund. I realize that it's heartbreaking that it cannot rejuvenate your revenue loss, but we also can't make our Christmas lists for equipment. You know, it's got to be used for things that we need to reimburse for. That's what the purpose of these funds are.
Lots of questions about utilities, and you know the updated guidance on May 28th provided a grant program, I guess, for residents or businesses that were unable to pay their utility bills. How do you see, how will you all interpret programs related to that? Of course, they can't use it directly to replace revenue under the guidance. But we have several cities asking, well, if we want to set up with city utilities and county utilities too, that if they wanted to set up a grant program, would they have to pay it over to the individual and receive it back, or could they require a grant application on needs-based and then the city pay it over to the utility directly without giving it to the citizen to pay? A lot of questions on how to set that grant program up related to utilities, Billy.
Yeah, I'm actually going to call on Travis Weber and Jennifer Peters because they are my utility gurus. Let me see if they're on here to unmute.
It does not look like they're on the panelist. Let's see. I see a Travis. Travis, I'm going to unmute you, allow to talk. There comes Travis and Jennifer Peters. And I see Jennifer.
They said they couldn't see their name on there a minute ago, but they were on.
Oh, I put
Can
on.
you hear me?
Can you hear me?
There she goes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Travis.
You can?
We
Yes.
got you. Go ahead, girls and boys.
All right, go ahead, Jen.
Okay, on these utilities, we have not at this point really sat down and discussed using the funds for this because we do have, hopefully coming soon, the Community Development Block Grant COVID funds. And we were really wanting to try to target and use some of the funds, those funds for this purpose.
And also, I'll point out too, there are other resources associated with other HUD programs that came down from the CARES Act with the ESG program that just also has received several additional $1 million that went through Kentucky Housing Corporation that are directly tied to utility expenses and assistance.
I think it would be best if they tried to use some of those funds and because the one thing about these CFR funds is the ability to pay the payrolls, because that's something that normal grants do not pay for. So that's just a big asset here. But if we had to go back and look at that, I don't think we would actually pay it to the individuals. We would have to have like a bill or something to that effect of how much each household owes, and we would pay their debt off. Maybe. It's just, we haven't really sat down and gone into depth on that yet.
So the best course of action then would be for them to come up with the proposal, get that blessed by your office on how that's going to be structured.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. Jim, you want to do any of
In,
these?
addition to what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We would rather hear you talk than us. I promise you that, Billy.
Oh, I think I've talked so much. In addition to what Jennifer said on the CDBG COVID funds, we were told back, I think the end of March, that we had a first phase of 15 million. And about a month ago, we were also notified that we've got another 16 million. So that's an additional 30 million in community development block grant, just COVID funds. And we are waiting on HUD to publish those funds. And if there's something that we see in an application here, or talking about the utilities as well, that we could deem more eligible in that pot of money, we want to utilize that so that can, free up some of this money to help your county in other areas. So if it's a big chunk of funds, we definitely want to look closer. And we've had about 8 to 10, I think, counties or cities that we've talked to about these funds. And hopefully we'll know something within the next, I hope, 2 weeks on this COVID funds.
Billy, I know this is a lot of question and answer, but I also hope that we can help you all and maybe do our part in messaging some things to members that you would agree with us on. And I'm going to say something here, and if you disagree, or Commissioner, let me know. But one of the things that I'm trying to encourage at least county officials is I'm reminding them that the governor and DLG and working with KCO and KLC, we've secured an allocation for every city and every county, and it's theirs, correct? I mean, for the time being, there's an amount of money that's been identified for each county and each city. And so I've encouraged a lot of counties, if you're not sure, stay inside the ditches. I mean, you got things that are expenses that you've incurred. You've got these things that are eligible, and you may need some money soon. And I know the commissioner and the governor have been committed to getting the dollars out fast to those who need them. And I've encouraged those folks to do that. But I've encouraged others, if you're just not sure, if you're really grabbing at the edges to try to find something, maybe if you're not desperate, be patient. There's going to continue to be developing guidance. There's going to continue to be potentially federal legislation that may or may even tweak some of these things. I think we would all, from the governor down to the counties and cities, would appreciate any federal action that could broaden the use of these funds. And so we don't know that, but we've got time. I mean, this isn't even July yet. And so we've got these funds set aside for each community that they can take some time. And I feel like some of our counties, at least, and JD, I don't know about the cities as much, are kind of in a mode of, I better hurry, I better get stuff in. And I've tried to encourage them to slow down. You guys are doing a great job of getting questions answered, but to stay away from the edges as much as possible until we know more. And is that an okay message for us to continue to keep saying to counties out there?
I agree 100%. And, right now we're almost at 50 applications that we've received. And I think probably by the end of the day, we'll probably have about a little over 50 logged in, and some are already under contract, ready to pay out their first funds probably within next week. Well, actually, I take that back. It could be 2 weeks, but take your time. And if you, like I said, if you have questions, and I think, Jim, what you're doing, I think that is great advice. I mean, there's no rush here. Actually, if these stagger in on a slower pace, it will help us as well to be more accurate on it versus receiving 100 applications within a week. I think that would be great with our staff as well. But we'll do whatever, but I think what you're saying is good advice.
I mean, Commissioner, we don't know. I mean, if the Congress passes an amendment to the CARES Act that changes some of these things, counties and cities may have no trouble qualifying for things in a month or 2 months that right now they say, well, I don't have a lot that fits. It could be that it changes. So again, that's just kind of the way we're approaching some of our counties.
You muted, Commissioner.
All right. Yeah, I would agree with that. This is, we don't know what's going to happen with Congress right now, and it very well could change. But I would caution, I would like to get out as much of the easy money that we can get out that doesn't go in those gray areas, so that we don't have a big rush in October of everybody throwing everything at us. So, keeping it between the easy stuff and getting it out there, we want to get you your money.
And we want to get that additional $345 million that's eligible to come to local governments as well. I'll say that again. As frequently as we can. Water and wastewater treatment plant employee salaries, eligible or ineligible?
Unfortunately,
I'm going to they're ineligible, but I'm going to let for Peters talk on this because this is her baby that she works on, and she's not real happy about this.
yeah, I feel for the water and sewer people because I feel that they should be frontline workers too, but apparently they're not considered that way. So we cannot pay for their salaries. However, if for some reason they had to go out, say they got a call at 9 o'clock at night and the pump station number 2 was down and you had sewage running over on the ground due to it being clogged by the non-flushable, flushable wipes that have been being flushed, and they're clogging the lines and they're clogging up the pump stations and burning the motors up. That time, however, is reimbursable because they're out there to do the pump station that was destroyed by the flushable wipes due to the COVID. Because once you couldn't get the toilet paper, the wipes became the next best thing. And people don't think about it. They just reach over and push that handle and it goes out of sight, out of mind. So they don't think about what happens to it after it goes down the drain. So yes, I'm very passionate about the water and sewer folks. I wish I could help them out more. Go ahead, JD.
What about reimbursement for space that a city or county allows their local hospital to use as a testing site?
That's eligible.
Actually, yeah, I think so.
It's eligible. It's one, I don't remember what page it's on, but it's one of the first few things that's listed.
If expenses were turned in for different grant reimbursement, but only paid at 50%, can we be reimbursed for the additional 50%?
Yes.
If it's COVID related?
As long as it's COVID related and it's listed on the DOB.
All right, I got a whole bunch of these. And so this is going to be repetitive. Just one more time. It seems like everybody strains on this in disbelief a little bit because they can't believe you can get reimbursement for all public safety employees. But just one more time. Are you saying that all public safety personnel, frontline, wages and fringe benefits are eligible for reimbursement from March 1st forward?
Yes, sir.
If a city government adopts or county adopts hazard pay for their essential employees, or will those funds be eligible? And I think you kind of made that distinction between about hazard pay for frontline employees, but have at that one too.
Okay, if you go to the bottom, and Matt, I may have you, our general counsel, come in and allude on that information of hazard pay, but on the page 7 of the frequently asked questions, may payments from the fund be used to cover across the board hazard pay for employees working during a state of emergency? And the answer to that is no. The guidance says that funding may be used to meet payroll expenses for public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, similar employees whose services are substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Hazard pay is a form of payroll expense and is subject to this limitation. So fund payments may only be used to cover hazard pay for such individuals.
I will add that, and this is Matt Stevens. I will add that it defines hazard pay too. It means additional pay for performing hazardous duty or work involving physical hardship. So a couple of that we have seen, they're calling them incentives or even bonuses, which is ineligible. So whenever you're paying this, it has to be for the actual duty that they are performing. It has to be for the physical hardship of it.
Billy, can I ask I've seen a couple of questions here too, and this is another, I'll make it broader than the specific question, but we've had a number of people ask us, I'm sure JD has had this from city officials as well. Technology, things that they have bought or may yet to buy in order to continue to telework at some level, to maintain social distancing, perhaps even in some cases, some equipment to live stream court meetings, city commission meetings in order to not have the public in the chambers. Would most of those kinds of things be eligible for reimbursement?
Yes, everything that actually you just listed there is eligible. If you've had to purchase a subscription to any kind of virtual Zoom, whatever it is, if you've had to buy laptops or iPads for your council members or your fiscal court staff to be able to do those, your meetings safely from home, or your employees, if they've gone home and they had to have equipment and you've had to purchase that, every bit of that is covered.
Excellent. JD, are we staying on a pretty hard hour for the webinar? We're bumping up on 11. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I assume it's DLG staff. Y'all don't want to go longer than an hour, or you want to try to sort through some more of these?
I'll take a couple more questions if there's something there that you see that we have not. Is the Secretary of Human Resource Officer for the Police Department applicable to request? No, they're not. I'm unfortunately not. All right, go ahead, JD. I'm sorry.
And I know the Association of Counties, they have an additional meeting, so I know they're going to have to go. I think they have an executive meeting. And what we will do here, it looks like there's about 40 unanswered questions. We'll capture those and try to get the answers out to all the participants, and maybe capture that and send it over to you, Billy and the rest of the staff, where you can look at it. I know it's 10:57. And I think just to come back and round it out, because I think if we ask one or two more here, we're going to leave a lot out, is that you all are open for business there, Commissioner and Billy, and it is, don't hesitate to call and ask. And to the extent that Jim and I can help you all form your own FAQ or something like that and get that out so you don't get a bunch of redundant calls, we'll work to do that with you all, so you're not having to get on the phone with the same question over and over. But you all have been more than open and willing to take any question and any call directly, not just through a webinar. But we know you need to be able to free up your time to be able to process the applications and look at the reimbursement. But I'll just say that from the league standpoint, you all have been really accessible and open in terms of getting information out, and we appreciate that from our standpoint.
Hey, JD, let me reiterate and repeat our email that we have several staff members looking at. It's dlg.crf@ky.gov. And again, we have everybody that's working on this program looking at that email, and we will get you an answer if you send it to that email.
Commissioner, why don't you round this baby out?
Well, I'm happy to do so. You know, as being a former chairman, I always like to close up the meetings and as painless as possible. And this will be not any different than the rest. But we want to thank you all for inviting us in, letting us do this. I can't speak highly enough of my staff. We treat this like, you know, you're our customers, and we want to make sure that you're happy customers, and we want to make sure that this money gets out in a meaningful way, and that it'll really help the cities and the counties. And that's what it's all about. This is all about a commitment to you all. We want to make sure that this money gets out in a good way, and everybody can use it. And if any questions come up that you're in a gray area or anything like that, don't hesitate to call us. You know, we're open for business, and we want to make sure we take care of you all. So with that, I'll have to leave. So thanks for everything. We appreciate it.
Commissioner, Billy, Matt, Will, Jennifer, Travis, Mary Palmer, and Judge Henderson over at KCO. Thank you all for your time, and we look forward to working with you down the road.
Thanks, everybody.